So this is Racism in Germany Part 2. I made a video about 7 years ago about how I experienced racism on the streets in Germany. I mentioned about a city where I came to, that was the city of Trier, and honestly I didn't feel so comfortable there. As you saw probably in the last video, people called you a foreigner on the streets, and people can just shout to you, fuck you, you know, without doing anything wrong. So after these uncomfortable encounters, I decided to move to the southern part of Germany. So I came to the southern part of Germany, to the state called Baden-Württemberg, with the hope that that the experiences with Germans would be more comfortable. Some of them were, some of them even got worse. I was physically assaulted by a random guy on the street who heard that I was speaking English with a friend of mine, and he started saying that they don't want Americans in Germany. Even though I am not an American, he just thought that I was because I was speaking English, and we were coming from our German courses at the university. And so this was a very traumatic experience for me. After giving it some thought, I decided that I could no longer stay in a place where I didn't feel physically safe. So I decided to move to a little bit to the north of Germany. So I decided to move to the northern part of Germany, to a federal state called North Rhine-Westphalia. I, of course, researched on the internet, how was the situation for foreigners there, because I didn't want to make another huge move and move to a place that was going to be worse than the first two cities where I was. So I moved to a city called Essen, and I gotta tell you that the situation improved. The interactions with Germans were more comfortable. There was no calling on the streets. There were no physically assaults on the streets. So I really felt more comfortable in Essen, even though the economical situation in the city was not very appealing to me. But I was living comfortably there. And in this state, in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is in the middle part of Germany, I've been moving around in different cities. Now I'm living in a city called Cologne, and in this city here, racism is not very openly used as in the southern part of Germany. It is more covertly used. Here, people do not attack you on the streets, and people do not call you names, but you can still feel some racism in the interactions that you have with people. There is always something in a conversation about migrants that live here in Germany, and somehow you feel spoken to, because of course, as a migrant, when people say something negative about other migrants, I feel that it is that they are speaking in a bad way of myself, because I am a migrant too here. And you listen to comments like, oh, migrants are just here because they want to take the money from Germans, or migrants, they are responsible for criminal activity in Germany. And somehow I have become very self-aware of these stereotypes, and I'm always overthinking on the streets. Oh, am I doing something that can be perceived as illegal, or do I look friendly enough so that people do not think that I embodied these stereotypes? And so even to think about that is kind of some work that you do mentally every day. Anyways, the situation here, like I said, the racism is not very open. So the racism is more covert. And you experience this in different institutions, in universities. You experience this at work. For example, as you know, there are many migrants in Germany that come here to study and also to look for a job after they have completed their studies. So that's me, you know. I came here to Germany with the idea to complete my studies. I completed a bachelor's program, and then I completed a master's degree. And the idea was that I was going to look for a job after that and, you know, just carry on with my life. But, you know, racism just doesn't stop when you are academically a professional. It continues. For example, I have seen lots of videos on Instagram or on other platforms where migrants complain or where migrants expose the fact that even though you have academic degrees that are accepted in Germany, a lot of Germans, they do whatever they can to prevent you from working in those fields of study. I can tell you an experience about this. For example, I finished my master program and I started, you know, doing an internship in a company. I was doing quite well. I felt welcome at the beginning, but then I started to see that these stereotypes were not something that people just easily ignored. For example, I can tell you about one or two experiences. Once there was a lot of traffic. I remember that I was in traffic for more than 30 minutes. So I came late to my internship, and then one of the comments that you hear at the company was, oh, you know, in his culture, it is very usual that people come late, even though you've been late once, and that was because there were protests on the streets in Germany. And so I thought that the lack of empathy was pretty huge. Another experience would be that, you know, something goes wrong at work, and the first thing that people do is think of you, and they come and ask you, hey, do you know what happened in this situation here where this machine got broke? Or do you know what happened to some snacks that were there in the cafeteria? And so you always have to be covering your back. You need to make sure that if you're late, that you send an email saying that you're going to be late, you know. Or if you see something that happens, that you need to take notes or have some documentation, because people are going to point things very easily at you. So that's something also that is quite uncomfortable. And when it comes to finding a job, the situation doesn't get any easier.